So let's do a bit of a warm up here, start thinking about insights specifically, because that's what we're talking about here. So, what are insights? Take a couple of minutes for you to think, what do you think insights are? If you want to pause the video for a second or 10 seconds and write down a definition or just some bullet points. What do you think insights are? That's the first thing to think about. Second thing is, okay, if you're clear what insights are, where do they come from? They come from somewhere. So where do insights come from? And lastly, what can they do for us? Because if something can't do something for you in business, it's useless and it's going to be discarded. So you have to be clear, what are these things specifically? Be very clear what they are, where they come from, and what are they going to do for you? Like, how is it going to help you grow sales, grow your business? That's what we want to know. So again, if you want to pause the video and just write down a few bullet points for each of these, so you get your frame of reference of where you are right now, and then check again at the end to, moving to what have you learned, to how to improve things. So let's get into the meat of things. Let's talk about the difference between facts and insights. So on the left, we have a fact. A fact contains no motivation for the action. It does not seek to understand whether the end user is satisfied or dissatisfied with the situation. It'll tell you something. It doesn't tell you if somebody is happy or unhappy with that situation or that fact. An insight on the right over here is a fundamental truth about customers' needs and motivations. An insight is a fundamental truth about a customer's needs and motivations, which unlocks relevant business opportunities, connects with target customers, and leads to a competitive advantage powerful enough to change behavior. That is the difference between a fact and an insight. An insight has needs and motivations, leads you to automatically thinking about opportunities, connects to customers, and leads to you doing something, a change in behavior, which will give you an advantage. That's what insights do. So when you are looking at things regarding insights, try to differentiate. Is this a fact or is this an insight? A lot of people will try to give you facts as insights, and equally they will try to give you insights, their insights, as facts. So you need to differentiate quickly which is which. Here's another way of thinking about it. Facts, an insight is like the hidden part of an iceberg. Facts are at the top of the iceberg. So if you weren't aware of this, an iceberg, when it's broken away from the ice pack and it's floating away in the ocean, what you see at the top is typically 20 to 30% of it. And 70 to 80% of the iceberg is under the water. So it's a big chunk of ice. Think of ice in water. It's still heavy. The heavy bit will sink to the bottom and the smaller bit will poke out of the top. This is why icebergs are so dangerous for shipping. Because if you think of the Titanic, even if a ship sees an iceberg, if they don't see it far enough in advance to be able to give it a really wide berth, to really change direction and go around it, you could see the 20% think, oh yeah, I'll just move 30 degrees to the left and I'll miss it, because you're missing what you're seeing with your eyes, but it'll still hit because 80% of it is sticking out way out in the water, and the ship or the submarine or whatever can still hit it under the water. That's why historically icebergs were just so deadly to ships. So when I think about facts, it's what you can see, just like an iceberg, it's what you can see in front of you. It's data information, plain as day. It's what the customer or end user said or did, or what they stated. That is a fact. I went to the store today. That is a fact. The insight is going down under the water to the deeper part. It's the understanding why the customer or end user said what they said or did what they did. It's the unstated part. You have to get to getting that insight. So an example I just gave you, why did I go to the store? That will be insight around behavior. If you own that store, the fact is I went to your store. The insight you want to get to is, why did I go to your store? So that's the difference between facts and insights. Facts is just data and information. Insight is understanding behind the fact. Why does the fact exist? Why did the customer say or do what they said or did that resulted in the fact up at the top? So don't just deal with facts. You want to get to the below the water. Let's bring it to life a bit more with examples between facts, observations, and insights. So let's look here. Here's a fact in this example. People tend to feed their pets twice a day. If you were sitting in someone's house, or you put some cameras up and then you watch the cameras, the observation is they tend to feed them at breakfast and dinner time, or in the evening time. The same ritual as people. People for sure eat breakfast and dinner. They often eat lunch as well. Most people don't feed their dogs 3 times a day. That's another observation. The observation is they tend to feed their dogs twice a day, in the morning and in the evening. They usually feed them before the humans eat. So if you were just in the room, fly on the wall, or you had cameras in the room and you were watching families, you can see the fact. They feed their pets twice a day, and the observation is they feed them around the same time as when the people eat, and then they actually feed them before the people eat. So what you would do if you ran a workshop, you would go and talk to these people. If they were end users or consumers or customers, if you were a pet food company, you would then want to know, well, what's the insight behind the fact? So why do you feed your pets twice a day? That's a bit odd. That's not how animals eat in the wild, right? If dogs came from wolves, they don't have breakfast and dinner, do they? So there's something behind there. There's an insight we need to find out. Why they feed them twice a day, and then why do they feed them before the humans eat? And they go and do that exercise, and the insight you get is that people feel that pets are part of the family, and they ascribe human feelings to them. So yeah, that's how people feel. They feel that the pets are part of the family. If you have children and pets, you kind of think of your pet. People think of their pets as another one of their children. And if you don't have children, people who don't have children and have pets, that's even more magnified. They tend to, infantilize or think of their children, think of the pets basically as sort of pseudo children, and treat them accordingly. And that's why they feed them twice a day, because, well, they're part of the family. The family eats, we eat breakfast together, we eat dinner together. So the pets eat when we eat. I'm going to make dinner for all the family. I'm going to make the pet food, and I'm going to make the human food. That's an insight, because they treat the pets like humans. But then why do they feed them the observation before the humans? And the insight is that they feel guilty eating in front of their pets, because they're emotionally attached, because they treat them like humans, if the pets are not already eaten. So if the humans are eating their human food and the pet hasn't eaten, if the pet's in the same room, the pet's going to be right there, especially if it's a dog. If it's a cat, it's the same thing. I've seen this. The cat will be there meowing away because it's hungry, and the dog will be right there, just looking right at you with its big eyes. And you know exactly from the look on its face. It's like, what are you doing, Mom or Dad? I haven't been fed. I'm starving here. And they'll be trying to jump up. They'll be like sniffing all around the table. And it makes people feel guilty. It's like, well, I'm eating, and, poor Fred, the dog, hasn't been fed and he's starving, and, the cat's scratching the table or whatever. So that's the insight. They feel guilty of eating in front of their pets. So you're a pet food company, or products for pets. That's a great insight that you can then do something with. So this is a good example of differentiating a fact, and then looking into the fact further with observations, and then coming up with an insight. So now we know what's the insight behind the fact. We know why people tend to feed their pets twice a day and why they feed them before the humans eat. So this is a challenge. When you're dealing with insights, how do you separate facts from insights? It's a constant challenge, and it's not always easy. And you don't have to beat yourself up too much. As long as you're getting it sort of 85% right, 80-20 rule, you're doing fine. So look at these examples, separating facts from insights. Let's read through these and try to think, is this a fact or is this an insight? As per industry survey, procurement managers are changing jobs more frequently with an average job tenure of 7 years. Social media is playing an increasingly important role in job search for procurement managers. So is that a fact or is that an insight? I would say that's a fact, because you've got, it's an industry survey and it gives you data. They're changing jobs every 7 years and social media is an important part of that. Okay, that's all part of a survey, so that's a fact. Next one, I do not like bargaining, haggling on price. I prefer win-win solutions from my suppliers, but I need to show at least 5% year-on-year savings in a high inflationary environment. It would be great to create productivity enhancing solutions that deliver both goals. Okay, this is one where it's both. You need to separate the fact and the insight. So there's a fact in here. This person, if this is your customer, says, I need to show 5% year-on-year savings in a high inflationary environment. So if you know inflation is high, this is a fact. They have to deliver 5%. That's the fact. The insight is that while they have to deliver 5%, they don't like bargaining and they like win-win. So it doesn't have to be a win-lose. To get your business, I have to give up my margin. The insight is I want to get there by creating productivity enhancing solutions that can deliver both goals. So the insight is they would prefer to get their 5% year-on-year savings with productivity enhancing solutions with you as a supplier. That is a great insight. The insight to deliver the fact that the customer needs. So this is how you separate fact and insights. Next example. I receive more than 20 short emails daily, but I hardly read them as they all read the same and cover the same topic with repetitive information. I do not like customized mass communications. This is also a mix of fact and insights. So the fact is, I receive more than 20 short emails daily. Sure, we can all sympathize with that. If you work in a corporate environment, or even if you have a Gmail account, even if you set up a new one, within a couple of years, your email gets out there into the internet, data brokers resell it, companies, you sign up to a couple of, subscribe to a few things. The next thing you know, you get at least 20 emails a day, and most of it's guff. So the person says, I get 20 emails a day. I get more than 20 emails a day. That's the fact. The insight is, I hardly read them as they look the same and they seem repetitive. That's an insight. There's no cut through. And the other insight is, I do not like customized mass communications. So that's one of your customers. That's the insight. This sending generic looking emails that are put through the same AI to say the same thing is not going to work. So you're going to waste your time. If your communication plan is, we're going to email weekly and we're going to grow through emails. If your target customers is telling you this, it's not going to work. So again, this is separating a fact and then the insight behind the fact. Last one. I know that my suppliers suffer on price, but I need to be credibly shown the monetary benefit of total cost of ownership over spot prices. So this one, again, fact, suppliers are suffering on price. The insight is, I need to be shown total cost of ownership, which is I'll pay a higher price, but then show me out of everything I'm paying how I'm going to save money. That's total cost of ownership. Don't just, if you sell me 5 things, how much will I save, or what's the productivity if I buy all 5 things versus negotiating each thing on price. If you're negotiating each thing just on price, I want a lower price. That's spot pricing for everything. So rather than lots of spot pricing every time, if you say we'll do one price, but I will save you 20% on your operation, that's the insight. So again, fact, suppliers suffer on price. If you only work on spot pricing, you will suffer on price. You will stay stuck on pricing negotiations. But the insight is, if you show me a credible total cost of ownership, a credible monetary benefit to shifting to a total cost of ownership model, I will potentially shift away from spot pricing. Fact and insights. So some good examples there. And when you are talking to customers or end users or prospects, and you're just getting all this information, try to think about this. Try to separate, even in your notes. Fact, insights. Just do an F, circle it, or an I, circle it. What are facts and what are insights? And this becomes useful later. When you gather all the facts and you start to cluster the facts, you then gain insights. Well, this is part of our brainstorming process later. So a good exercise for you. So this is it now, the insight generation process. How do you generate insights if you have none today? It's a 3-step process, very simple. Always keep it simple. 3 steps. Number 1, discover. Number 2, synthesize. Number 3, turn it into action. Discover, synthesize, action. 3 steps. To break it up into more detail, we get into these 5 steps here, and it's a linear process. So discover, what's the business challenge you're trying to solve? Marketers and researchers define the challenge together and translate it into research questions. Then, once you know what the challenges you're trying to solve, it's about getting the data and information to solve it. So it's collecting facts and figures, customer attitudes, needs, behaviors, motivations, etc. And there's lots of ways to do this. So you gather data and information. Then's the synthesis part. It's understanding. You generate hypotheses. You interpret the raw data into a deeper understanding of what is driving customers' attitudes and behavior. And then from understanding, you turn it into insights. You dig for the truths that's powerful enough to change behavior. And insights, that's the generating the insight. And from that, you turn it into action. What actions will be taken? Think, what does this mean for our strategy? What does it mean for products or services? The experience we give, the offers, the communications we put out into the market. Now, this course, we are not talking about actions. We have other ones for that. We are in this part here. We want to give you a template and tools to define the business challenge and talk about how do you do the synthesis part to arrive at insights. So this is the process end to end, but it's keeping it simple. 1, 2, 3. Discover, synthesize, action. So firstly, talking about the discover part. This is a framework to do the discover part.